Welcome. This is Business Edge on News Central. I'm Tolulope. Adeleru, Balogun. Our headline story: another rebasing of Nigeria's GDP. Nigeria is collaborating with the World Bank, and they have commenced the process to rebase the country's gross domestic product, that is GDP. What are the implications of the rebasing? What does it involve? We'll also touch base with a few stories we're keeping our eyes on with NC4 to watch. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Now, GDP is the final value of the goods and services that are produced within a nation's geographic boundaries during a specified period of time, normally within a year. The growth rate of a nation's GDP is an important indicator of the economic performance of the country. Rebasing of the GDP is the replacement of the old base year used for compiling the GDP with a new and more recent base year for computing the constant price estimates. This is necessary because the changes in relative prices and the structure of the economy over time. Now, in its bid to rebase Nigeria's GDP, the National Bureau of Statistics announced that following the successful completion of the listing of establishments, a component of the National Business Sample Census, the NBS commenced the National Business Sample Survey, otherwise known as the Survey of Establishments. It said the NBSS was also a component of the NBSC, which involves in-depth study of sampled establishments based on the sectors identified in Business Sample Census. The Bureau's spokesperson, Ichedi Sunday, said that the objectives of the NBSS include rebasing the gross national product from 2010 to 2018-2019. The objective also includes to provide sectoral data at national and state levels, determine the structure of the Nigerian economy, and determine the sectors that drive the Nigerian economy and those that require government intervention to improve them. Nigeria is collaborating with the World Bank for this exercise. Now, joining me on Business Edge to take us through this is the business editor, the head of our business desk right here, Nasir Afolabi Agbalaya. Nasir, welcome to the show again. Long time.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. So the first question that we're going to get into is about the fact that this is the second time that Nigeria will actually be rebasing her GDP. We've seen Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, India, and others that have done it. So really, what is the purpose of rebasing a nation's GDP?
Well, over time, the GDP is based on data of the production, the income, expenditure, all those facts and figures. Now, these change over time. So it is essential to be up to date. And to do that, the rebasing is done. Well, every nation has its own Bureau of Statistics that release a monthly, quarterly, and a yearly data of the prices of goods and services, income, expenditure. So now the rebasing is done to, say, review the prices and know the structure. So with this, the correct GDP is calculated. Now, when in 2013, when it was done last, that rebasing showed that Nigeria took its pride of place as the true giant of Africa. Now, there's so many factors that before was not considered in the calculation. But during that rebasing, those new data were added. And right now also, consider the fact that 2020, the whole world literally has been on its knees because the coronavirus pandemic has reduced earnings. So it is important truly to recalculate how we calculate our GDP.
All right, so there's no set time, there's no particular set standard. It can be done yearly if a country wants to, even though it's quite a long, deeply involved process, but there's nothing that says this is when it has to be done. All right, so let's also look at what the rebasing means for the average citizen. We'll talk more about 2013 later on, but what does the rebasing of the GDP, how does it affect the average citizen, whether you're Nigerian, you're Indian, you're from Kenya? Does it mean more money in your pocket, less to pay at certain points? What is the effect?
No, it means that the economy is much more healthier or not so healthy. Now, it gives a true picture of the economy. And with this, the central bank and every other agency knows that, fine, this is how we tackle the economy. Do we release more money or do we hold money to fight inflation? Now, if you observe that Nigeria's central bank has maintained its MPC ratio because now they need to encourage the real economy to grow. And with that, there has to be more money in the economy. So that's one of the reasons why this is being done now, to ascertain that that particular exercise is on the right track. Now, NBS released its own figures that why we have high inflation. So why have we had high inflation? There is so much money that the central bank has pumped into the economy and the agri sector, the medium-scale enterprises, and more are still coming. If my data is correct, by next week now, some more money will be pumped into the Nigerian economy to still boost the real sector. Now, all these are meant to ensure that first, the banks lend more people money, and also to ensure that microfinance, medium-scale enterprises can thrive more. You know, if they don't have finance, there's no way they can do business. Sure. So invariably, the government is trying to ensure that Nigeria not leave recession, but it becomes more viable, and the average Nigerian can actually put more food on their table.
So you've partially answered my next question, which goes to the earning power and the cost of living in Nigeria in terms of how that has changed, particularly the pandemic year. We've lived through 2020, and for many people, 1 year felt like 5 years. It felt like 5 whole years through 2020. But we know the economic implications that the COVID pandemic has had on the entire world, and we know that Nigeria ended 2020 with a recession. So this rebasing, you've partially answered it in terms of having more money in the pocket. So will it improve the state of Nigeria's economy? Will it ease things for Nigeria's citizens? No. A definitive yes or no?
I thought to preempt the answer. I mean, what the outcome would be. But it is expected that with rebasing, just more data are added into the calculation. It is very, very possible that.
But the data could actually show again with the 2020 pandemic year that things are actually worse.
True. That's why I said I want to preempt. Okay. It is possible that after the rebasing, it will be much better, or it will be fine. We need to tighten our belts. So until this particular exercise is completed, we cannot say this is what will happen. Okay. We can only assume. But it is safe to allow the data speak for us, because now the whole world is being data-driven. This is the more reason why it is essential to have accurate data. So when it is done, we'll know where we are literally.
Okay, so let's talk about the nitty-gritty. It's easy to say they're doing this survey, they're doing this, but what is the nitty-gritty? What are the nitty-gritty elements that go into rebasing an economy? What are we looking at?
Well, first now, how much has average Nigerian earned over time?
Okay, over the past year, right?
Exactly. Now, from the period under review.
Okay.
Now, this will be checked. Now, how much are they spending also? The average Nigerian, the average company, even government establishment, everything needs to be considered. Also, how much have we produced during this period? We all know that cost of production has truly changed. Many raw materials cannot even be exported by those who are exporting them before. But some are still making it out. We know that cocoa has been going out. It's even more demand than before. We know that the price of oil also has gone up. I mean, it reached almost 60 a couple of hours ago. So all these will be calculated. Now, the main thing that will determine this now is how much are we spending compared to what is coming in. So after the exercise, we'll really know how healthy we are. Because let's not forget that Nigeria, like many other nations, has been borrowing considerably over time. And this has to be paid. Fine, some nations and some lenders are agreeing to some debt relief. But despite this, we still have to pay the interest.
Okay, so we'll get into that debt burden conversation in a bit, but it feels like the rebasing of the GDP is Nigeria opening its books. Again, this is being done in collaboration with the World Bank and auditing itself. How this will play out is something that we'll be paying attention to. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more things. Nigeria's previous rebasing in 2013, as well as what does rebasing have to do with the country's debt burden? That part of the conversation after this. This is still Business Edge, and we're talking about the recently commenced exercise of rebasing Nigeria's GDP. Now, GDP can be estimated through 3 methods: production, income, and expenditure. Inflation is about 15% in Nigeria, which means that production costs have gone up and income has reduced, while expenditure continues to climb up. Now, my guest is the business editor, the head of our business desk here at News Central, Nasir. Will rebasing the economy ease any of these things we're looking at, production, income, expenditure? What kind of effect will a rebased economy or rebased GDP have on this?
Well, first, it will have to aid income inflow into the country, foreign direct investments.
If the rebasing makes us look good.
True,
Okay.
true. Let's be optimistic. You know,
We're coming
really,
from a pandemic here. My optimism is very
hey,
low.
don't forget that Ghana somehow winged it through.
Nigeria is not Ghana.
Unfortunately. Well, back to reality.
Yeah.
It is possible, yes, that we will have more investments. Now, everybody wants to know how your books are being kept. What are the data available? Now, and also, this will also show more areas of investment, which is a very, very critical part of this whole narrative. Now, Nigeria is still marketing itself. Many states in Nigeria are holding investment summits. Lagos calls it Betty, Ogun calls it something. Now, these are avenues to attract people. And the nation itself also is doing many stuff to bring in people. This is what the rebasing will help make a reality.
Okay.
Now, we know that expenditure is what it is. We cannot do anything about that right now. But really, we can do something about it. Government can come down on its expenditure. I'm not saying letting workers go, no, but the cost of governance itself can be reduced. Our lawmakers, our governors, they have many aides that...
They have interesting salaries too.
Okay, let's not go in there
I
right
said
now.
interesting. I said
Agreed.
Salaries,
But
interesting.
now, about the workforce itself, I don't mean the civil servants, but I mean the political aides, which political elites have. They can be pruned down to reduce the cost of governance.
Okay.
Now, all these will, over time, help the nation as a whole. Now, talking about the income, now, we do know that Nigeria has a new wage structure, but how well has this been implemented? That is one of the main things that will help and make the society more viable. When it is fully implemented, of course, the average worker will be happy, will be able to go out, and money will flow freely in the economy.
Including fixing electricity, but we're not there yet. All right, let's move on. Now, Nigeria's previous rebasing in 2013 increased the GDP from $270 billion to $510 billion. It also revealed that Nigeria's economy surpassed South Africa's to become the largest in Africa, and Nigerians did not let the rest of the continent forget. Nigeria's share of sub-Saharan Africa's GDP grew from 21.3% to 31.7%. Nasir, has Nigeria lived up to the hopes of the 2007 and 2013 rebasing?
Sort of. Let's be realistic.
Okay.
Yes, we have. Before 2013 rebasing, we didn't consider Nollywood, the telecom sector, and these sectors are still thriving. MTN, Airtel, these brands have been able to, let's say, do wonders when it comes to diversification. And there are examples which many business schools even take out and teach people, fine, you have a brand that is selling, you have a product that is selling, you can diversify and, say, improve yourself to increase your revenue base. So, yes, in that regard, it has really lived up to its expectations. But there's still lots of room. Now, in this particular iteration, now we have many fintechs that have become more vibrant.
Yeah.
The financial sector, it's something in Nigeria which has taken, say, has really grown in leaps and bounds. Fine, we are still following East African example, but considering the fact that you have many thriving companies here right now, I foresee that the rebasing will be very positive for Nigeria.
All right. Finally, because of time, we also, as I did mention earlier, the debt burden conversation that we seem to have and come back to anytime we're talking about African economies. Now, the debt burden of many nations has weighed against their GDP, is weighed against that GDP. Quickly, what effect do you think a rebased GDP, whether it's positive or negative, whatever it may be, will have on Nigeria's debt burden? It depends on what it is, then we know what effect it will have, correct?
Agreed.
Okay.
But the thing is, most nations like Nigeria still need to borrow, unfortunately. But now, with the rebased GDP, we can borrow and you can have strategic partnership. So you don't really need to borrow everything. You can have partners where you will put part of the money down, and also your partners will put the other part, the other half of the money down. So invariably, you are not truly borrowing. You are entering a business agreement where you can later on share the profits. So with this, with the rebasing, I mean, it is much possible for Nigeria to renegotiate some of this foreign inflow of funds.
Okay.
And hopefully also our bonds will have better yields, because of late it has really been not so impressive. So I hope with this rebasing now, Nigeria's bonds will be more subscribed to, and of course you have more money to spend.
He's on the positive notes, more money to spend, which at the end of the day, when you mention GDP to any citizen, that is what they want to know. What am I taking home and how much am I able to keep in my pocket? Nasir, Afolabi, Agbalaya, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
All right, as we wrap things up, it is NC4 to watch, and where else do we start but Nigeria? Now, the country's first locally assembled electric car, the Hyundai Kona, will be officially unveiled by the National Automotive Design and Development Council today. The electric car has been tagged as an innovation that will enable Nigeria and Nigerians to benefit from the gains in renewable and sustainable energy, and should also help foster an eco-friendly environment. Data from the Central Bank of Kenya shows that more and more Kenyans now use ATMs less and have instead shifted their transactions to mobile payments and other cashless platforms. The value of transactions using prepaid cards at the ATMs stood at 194.25 million Kenyan shillings in March 2020 compared to 180 million Kenyan shillings in December of 2020. Now, moving on to the next one, South African revenue collections that are expected to overshoot budget estimates could take some pressure off the national treasury to raise taxes to pay for the acquisition and rollout of coronavirus vaccines. Total tax revenue for the first 9 months of the fiscal year is 875.7 billion rand, according to National Treasury data. And finally, the Bank of Africa has just concluded a partnership with the Chinese Development Fund with the ambition to promote, facilitate, and co-finance Chinese companies looking to set up in Tangiers Tech Hub, aiming to confirm the major role played by the Bank of Africa in strengthening relations between Africa and China. The banking group is increasing its cooperation projects and has signed a partnership agreement in Beijing and Casablanca with a leading Chinese economic player. And NC4 to Watch wraps up this edition of Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget that you can, of course, follow us on social media at News Central TV. We're also on air, online, and on the ground as well. And until Monday, do have a pleasant weekend. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru, Balogun.